Thank you, everyone. Let's see how this works. All right, so I'm here to talk to you today about bulky waste. We're just going to have a quick overview, get everyone on the same page, and we're going to look at the different collection models that we have in Australia at the moment. We're going to look at those service model attributes, what the models are in each of the states and what recovery levels we're seeing. We're going to have a little look at innovation, and then we might try and pick a winner as to which one is the best. All right, so bulky waste is generally described as items that don't fit in a standard bin. This can be, quite often councils have what they call accepted items that they will collect through their bulky waste services. There's generally a block of items which are restricted in volume or in weight sometimes, depending on what it is. And then there's generally a list of not accepted items. These can vary across councils, but this is a generalised statement. Okay, how are these materials collected? So the first one is called On Call. It's like a booked collection service and it's collected by council or a contractor. This is the more traditional model. Residents contact the council to book in a collection, and it's generally capped on a number of collections per year, and it has volume limits associated with that. The second service model is what's called a scheduled collection, again done by council or a contractor. Now these are predetermined collection dates throughout the year, and it might be a certain day you get or a certain week of the year where you're going to get your bulky waste collected. It's generally limited to either annually or biannually or quarterly, and it's organised by zones or specific areas across the LGA to maximise that coverage for each event. Again, residents must limit the volume that they put out, and it provides that predictability for residents and service operators having a known time of the collection. And the third system offered is a drop-off by a resident. So they can drop off their bulky waste to the resource recovery centre or transfer station, and sometimes there's temporary convenient pop-up sites. Sometimes this is free, or there's a certain fee for certain items. There's generally no cap on the volume though. You can drop off at the site, and it's available all year round within the designated site's operational hours. There is a fourth one, which is a hybrid model of these systems, and that can provide some flexibility and ease of access for residents. However, it obviously brings complexity in managing a hybrid service. Going to move to comparing the benefits. So on call, we have the flexibility for the resident to call up. It's convenient for them. They do it on a day that they're going to be around. It offers collection from the actual property, which might be beneficial for those with accessibility challenges. The bookings process allows for a little bit of education. So I think that's also something you might not think about, that there's an opportunity there for sharing information with that resident. It sees higher rates of resource recovery compared to the scheduled service, and it's easier to enforce any volume limits compared to the scheduled service, which is much harder to enforce because they just put it out on the verge or the curbside. Looking back then at the scheduled service, this benefit has of having the optimal route planning for council or the service operator. This reduces the fuel and the labour costs per collection compared to the on-call service. There's predictability and timing, helps residents plan in advance. It also, however, though, has the lower rates of resource recovery compared to the on-call service. Looking at the benefits of a drop-off model, this requires the least resources. It has the most environmentally efficient service because the residents are taking their waste rather than a vehicle travelling around the streets. It encourages correct behaviour from residents because they get more opportunity to do the right thing. And the last one there, it provides the potential for the greatest opportunity for true cost recovery because council can control the cost based on an assessment of that material as the resident arrives at the drop-off site. Having a look at the disadvantages across the three systems, the on-call system has the disadvantage, I guess, is they're restricted to that acceptable items list and also a volume limit. It has the higher operational costs per collection because of the fleet and resourcing, and it also has that call centre admin burden. It has the costs of the new collection, the cost of a new service will obviously increase the rates to residents if it's a new service, and it's more environmentally inefficient due to that increase of resources. Those last two there are shared, those disadvantages are shared across the scheduled service as well. But particularly the disadvantages for the scheduled service is that it does lack the flexibility for residents who generate bulky waste outside of that specific, once a year schedule. Because it's just left on the side of the curb, it can be unsightly and result in some amenity issues. There's a lack of understanding or knowledge from residents on what happens to the items once collected, because they just dispose of it out onto the street. And there's return visits if residents claim they missed the scheduled service. So I'm sure some of you have experienced those residents. Some disadvantages with the drop-off service, it may present accessibility challenges for residents if the site isn't located within a reasonable distance of their home. Their fees associated with that disposal when they get there, if it's not a free drop-off, may deter users. And clearly there's going to be a high capital cost to establish the site with ongoing maintenance and cost infrastructure. Just a small thing to think about with some potential risks comparing between the three models. So the on-call service, there could be dissatisfaction from the resident if the service limitations aren't communicated well with regard to those volumes and that acceptable items. And if it's a new service, there could be that dissatisfaction from residents if the cost of the rates increases. That is also shared with the scheduled service, of course, if it's a new service. With the scheduled service, there is an increase in operational health and safety risks for operators, and you have the risk of that scavenging and illegal dumping issue. And one of the other risks with the drop-off is that if the service disadvantages are not managed well, that risk of community dissatisfaction with regard to not being able to get to the site. And the volume of material delivered cannot be managed. So you can't control how much material you're actually going to be collecting through that drop-off. All right, a quick look at some national statistics. So as you can see here, there's a varied amount of models across the different states. The one to probably focus on is which one's getting the highest diversion rate. So the drop-off with regard to where we do have the data, this was data across the last few years. There isn't very good data in this space to be able to compare across the states. But yeah, Western Australia had, through their drop-off service, had a 92% diversion or recovery rate. So clearly that's the one with the wins if you're rolling out this service for recovery. Is there any innovation in this space? In looking further afield, the UK they charge differing fees per item, so it does provide that direct incentive to minimise waste. Councils actively promote reuse and free online platforms, and they accept donations of reasonable goods for free at sites. Really interesting what's happening in Amsterdam. They're using some object detection technology within the bulky waste storage rooms at the bottom of their muds to distinguish between if it's bulky waste or litter. The system actually identifies key types of materials, and then that real-time data is collected from those daily scans and informs dynamic collection and planning and sorting, which then, as well as providing that ability, there's targeted campaigns to address any particular problem areas. So they're really getting some, optimising their resource recovery using, detection technology. So hopefully we'll see a lot more of that. Do we have any innovation in Australia? We do. Has anybody here, show of hands, heard of the FlexiSkip just a couple of people. For those of you who don't know, there's a service in southeast Queensland. It appears to offer some higher diversion rates through than the ones we were seeing on the previous slide. The service provider Handle claim a diversion rate of 69 to 78%, and Able also claim to offer cost savings due to service efficiencies. I've just got a little video here to show you, to explain what.
As we exclusively revealed last year, curbside collection is getting a major shake-up on the Gold Coast. Now we can tell you exactly how it works, when it starts, and who can take advantage.
This is the future of curbside collection. Rather than rubbish piling up on footpaths for weeks on end, these bags can be filled with up to 1 tonne of garbage and collected for free any time at the touch of a button through a smartphone app or over the phone.
You can fill it up in a day or a week or a year.
Gold Coast Council blazing the trail, trialling an on-demand collection in select suburbs from next month. It's really quite simple. You get a box like this delivered to your door. Inside is one of these blue flexi skips. This is what you put your rubbish into. Once it's full with everything you need taken away, simply get your phone, scan the code on the side, and a local driver like Tony here will come and collect it. Queensland company Handel Group winning the contract to revolutionise the service.
The usual bulky curbside collections, you would put everything out on the verge. Scavengers would come and take all the good commodities.
The current model sends everything to landfill. Now they're aiming to salvage or recycle at least 85%.
Everything that can be reused, like scooters and bikes, goes to the Endeavour Foundation. They fix them up and they sell it through their tip shops.
Also hoping for a reduction in illegal dumping.
Why wouldn't you just bring it to the verge and we take care of it and we get rid of it?
The trial only running in certain areas. Council will contact you if your house qualifies. Nick Kelly, 9 Gold Coast News.
There you go. He did a much better job than I could, so I thought I'd just play you that. So great work there. So can we do better in Australia? That's some innovation that is happening. Currently, I feel that the services that are being offered are out there for convenience and not necessarily for that resource recovery purpose. Clearly, the biggest limiting factor is that public participation and the condition of the items collected to be able to be recovered or go on to reuse. There is potential, though, for greater resource recovery, but careful consideration needs to be undertaken. So, your current collection contracts, are there options for variation or KPIs in the new service contract to drive that recovery? Are the economic levers there with cardboard and metals attracting the revenue? You obviously need to have use of a local sorting facility or a regional collection point to be able to do that recovery activity. Going to need some expansion of education programs to maximise uptake and then minimise that contamination. These need to be promoted. The promotion of community reuse programs would also be important. And fostering partnerships with social enterprises like the Handel Group were doing there with Endeavour Foundation, which can also offset council resources. So just as a summary, so the on-call model offers that flexibility but requires that robust scheduling to optimise the service routes, maximise efficiencies. Does generate a higher weight per service and lower cost due to that fewer overall pickups, but it suffers from having lower participation rates. The scheduled service provides a broader accessibility but comes with its challenges. It has that visual clutter from the early placement of waste on the curb, increased operational emissions from inefficient collection routes potentially, and that additional clean-up after scavenging. And the drop-off service does achieve the highest diversion rates. Got that better segregation and reduced contamination, and the items are typically presented in a better condition, but it relies on the residents' access to suitable transport, which can limit equity and participation. So, is there a winner to which model you should pick? Well, it's the drop-off service, clearly, but it's complicated. It has that higher accessibility, the higher resource recovery, and the least operational costs. But I have some buts on the right. But council obviously have to have their own site, or they have to lease a site, and that site can only be used when it's actually open for residents. And then council need to have enough space to store the items, prior to any bulk collection or resource recovery activities, and the resident needs to have a suitable transport option to get there. So I guess my conclusion is that, yeah, councils do need to prioritise that equity, transparency and effective communication to maximise community participation and service delivery. But it's definitely a complex area, especially if you want to focus on doing some greater resource recovery. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you.